September 1997, crowds flocked to see rotting cows' heads, pickled sharks, and mass murderers.
If Myra Hindley hadn't killed those children, this portrait would not be hanging up here today.
Myra Hindley has never admitted her guilt. It's all about the children. It just seemed a really poignant, simple statement.
All hell broke loose. Somebody came along and threw some paint at it.
Most of it was stale, shallow, puerile.
On one level, it's an art show, on another level, it's a freak show.
With two fingers up at the old art world, the Sensation exhibition causes a sensation.
Come what may, that rubbish will be on view for months.
Contemporary art is the new rock and roll.
It was like punk rock coming along. It just wiped the floor of everything that had ever happened.
Back with another one of those block rockin' beats.
It's a story that starts in the 1980s art schools, dole queues, and squats of Margaret Thatcher's Britain.
There was a sort of team of people here. You'd sort of make an application. Hello, I'd love to live in one of your squats, please.
Some experts say unemployment could rise to 5 million by the end of the century.
As for something called the art world, that seemed like a branch of the establishment.
What's art? It's traditionally a picture of your horses and your hounds and your estate. It's not where the big breakthroughs happened in this country.
Drenched in punk rock spirit, a group of upstarts throw a grenade, rocking the establishment.
It was people dancing, having a cultural event in the ruins of factories and warehouses.
When the audacity to defy convention fuels an explosion of creativity.
That is a total change of rules. When there was an opening, people kind of migrated to it like it was a kind of an area of great worship.
There was a lot of free drink, and there would be fights, comfortable mayhem.
When the world of art, music, and fashion swaggers with attitude. A time of dramatic change that the world is watching.
Now it's England's time, the little tiny island's time. Let's have it.
About 5 months before the Sensation exhibition, which was opening in September, we had a press conference. And I remember showing a number of images at the press conference, and, you know, I'm sure there was a representative of the Daily Mail there. You know, we had a very good press department at the Royal Academy. Nobody said a word. Then I was on holiday in Spain with my wife, and suddenly I get this telephone call from the president of the Royal Academy, hysterical. My God, there's a huge article in the Daily Mail. What are we going to do? You must come and help, you know. It's what I call a silly season piece of news. And so I run back to London when the Daily Mail wrote the news that we were going to show a portrait of Myra Hindley. So I met with the president of the Royal Academy, and we organised for a little committee, which you might call a conservative group of members of the Royal Academy. But when they saw the painting, they were convinced that this was a proper work of art. And, you know, and so we went ahead and did it.
Themes of death and mortality are central, but it's this picture, above all else, that's provoked outrage. Hundreds of children's handprints portraying the Moors murderess Myra Hindley.
2 days before Sensation is due to open, the debate intensifies around Myra, and 4 Royal Academians resign amidst protests.
If Myra Hindley hadn't killed those children, this portrait would not be hanging up here today. And I think that in itself is enough to warrant that it should be withdrawn.
Of course, the mothers of some of the victims didn't know where their children are being killed to this day, in fact. So in that situation, there is indignation that someone could possibly be commercially exploiting the deaths of the horrible deaths of innocent children. But actually, the artist is reminding us that Myra Hindley was complicit in these crimes, has never admitted her guilt, and that it's all about the children. It's not about her. It just seemed a really poignant, simple statement.
The painting stays, and the exhibition launches with a lavish opening party.
I seem to remember Gavin Turk walking around dressed as a tramp, but he wasn't just dressed a little bit as a tramp, he was dressed really like a tramp.
I actually had shoes made out of newspaper, and I had checkered trousers which were tied up with a piece of string, and I actually stank. I really kind of let myself kind of go and became incredibly dirty and relatively nasty.
And then, I don't want to say it on camera, but he peed himself for authenticity.
I did what everybody did, try to avoid the stinky bloke that was there. And it turned out that it was Gavin Turk.
It was shocking, actually, because you knew that he would normally be thrown out.
Why wasn't he thrown out? I mean, so he must have been followed around by some RA person who kept going, no, leave him.
It seemed to be like the apex, where it was a huge moment of something which was coming from the outside to something that was coming to the inside, something that was becoming the establishment.
As the exhibition opens, it provides rich fodder for not only the tabloid press, but also the TV pundits.
The thing that offended me most is Sarah Lucas. She's done this representation of a woman, 2 fried eggs for the breasts and a doner kebab for the genital area. And all you think is, this is so disgusting. It's
absolutely, and I remember, I remember the moment.
Is it just simply sensation? It's sensational. You know, it was asking for a proper pulverising.
Alongside Myra, the works that caused the most controversy are by brothers Jake and Dinos Chapman.
The Chapmans had their room that was slightly closed off to the under-18s because they had all these mannequins with their penile noses.
So fuckface is a mannequin, an object which is used to attract a buyer. We wanted to kind of amplify that and try and make that as extreme as possible. So fuckface is just a figure with a penis for a nose and a kind of a weird anus for a mouth, which kind of somehow reveals the true libidinal nature of how people are attracted to capitalist objects.
I think it is sort of strangely moral. I think it is a profoundly creepy thing to look at.
So I think this is cheap, cynical garbage. I think they're using the bodies of children because it's the last great taboo in our society.
Also breaking taboos at Sensation is intimate work by an artist little known outside of the art world, Tracey Emin.
Tracey, everything in her life is part of her art. Everyone I've ever slept with was this woman being painfully honest about the mess that her life had been on a kind of relationship level. She's set it all out, and it annoyed people. It was a bit too in your face.
And the controversy just keeps on coming.
Well, we have just heard that the painting of Myra Hindley was defaced late this afternoon. The Royal Academy of Art says the picture has been daubed with paint.
The painting had to be taken down for a few days. It all helped to draw attention to the exhibition.
There are people thronging in Piccadilly trying to get tickets, beseeching people to take them in on their tickets.
300,000 people flocked to see Charles Saatchi's private collection of over 100 works by 42 different artists.
Charles Saatchi was very good at advertising it, which was, of course, his day job. And I think there was something about packaging this group of newish, youngish artists that caught the imagination.
To the insiders, by this time, everything was known about that generation of artists, and they'd already established themselves in the smaller world of art. But what Sensation did, I think, was to kind of bring it, partly thanks to the stupidity of newspapers like the Daily Mail and the Myra Hindley situation, it suddenly made that world of art popular, a little bit closer to the world of pop music.
And just like the world of pop music, some artists become more famous than others. And it's Tracey Emin who is about to be propelled into the limelight, courtesy of a drunken TV appearance.
Are really real people in England watching this programme now? They're really watching it.
The live TV discussion is an earnest post-sensation debate on the demise of painting in contemporary art.
Couldn't work out whether you have a problem with painting per se or whether you think oil painting as a medium is used up.
Go somewhere.
Do you know what I think? I think the Damien Hirst...
She will literally tell you everything. There is no filter on her whatsoever. And that's a gift and a handicap at the same time.
You people aren't relating to me now. You've lost me. You lost me completely.
So you
But
don't
I just wanna
think it is a
leave.
generational thing?
There's nowhere when there's fucking mic on me. Now, I want to...
There's things that I've done when I've been drunk that I do not know about. My friends have even threatened now to put me on film and show it to me the next day, and they said I wouldn't believe it. What I do and what I say is absolutely outrageous.
The press became obsessed with Tracey because it was so easy to categorise her. And in fact, she did get loads and loads of letters from women. Loads and loads of women wrote to her. Her subject matter resonated with people who would never have been in an art gallery.
But it's another artwork of Tracey's that's really hitting a nerve and keeping contemporary art in the news.
Right, it's a filthy old bed with a dirty pair of knickers and one or two other things lying by.
That is my actual bed, that is my actual sheets, they are my actual possessions. For me, this piece of work is about all the things to do with living. Like waking up, feeling lonely. And also the bed, you can see it's like a place of maybe some kind of like wild sex, something really passionate has happened there, something really emotional. For me, it looks like something from some kind of 17th century boudoir.
The bed and the knickers are obviously completely absurd and totally idiotic, and it exists for an elite.
Tracey's talking about the reality of her life, her messy life. Anyway, the piece called Outrage, and I had to go on a BBC programme and defend it.
Well, hello. This is art. Well, to be honest, it's not, actually. It's an unmade bed, but a very similar one, slept in by Tracey Emin, has turned out to be the star attraction at the Tate Gallery. Are they taking the mick out of us?
People go, oh, is this art? So we were having the is it art discussion all over again.
What modern art has done is to create something which everybody wants to talk about. Now, I don't expect you, Nick, starting a programme lying on the bed, making a prat of yourself to, you know, see where I'm coming from.
I'm genuinely interested.
You've lain on a bed that is a pathetic parody of a valid work of art by one of the most exciting young artists.
Can't really manufacture it, but there's something that people have, which is an X factor that people like or makes them saleable, and Tracey's got it.
Damien Hirst also has the wow factor and is experiencing celebrity status and the partying and excess that goes with it.
The Groucho Club was the epicentre for it all. It was a place where, you know, a lot of bad behaviour happened, but it was really exciting and super fun. Alex James and Damien became really good friends, and then there was the whole football song thing that was Keith Allen and Damien and Alex James.
Keith liked wearing women's underwear and going to football matches. It was another kind of obtuse thing, you know. It's like, let's take cross-dressing to the terraces. Me and Keith and Damien all got some like nice bra and knickers and went down to Craven Cottage to cheer on Fulham. There was a drummer just going vroom-ba-dum, vroom-ba-dum, vroom-ba-dum. The World Cup was coming up. Keith really wanted to do a football record. We kind of wrote something in 15 minutes. Damien said, oh, that's really good. I'll pay for you to go to Townhouse Studios and recorded it. We recorded it like with everyone in our gang.
Now, I believe you've got the artwork here. Is this the first record you've ever done the artwork for?
No, I did a Dave Stewart record. I did a video for Blur as well.
Damien did the artwork. It just goes to show that, like, how much money there was sloshing around then. It was literally 6 weeks before the World Cup started. Keith made the video.
Where on earth are you from? Me from England. Where you come from? Do you put the kettle on?
I remember Keith saying, need 100 max walls, 2 really fat men painted white. Get me Matt Lucas and David Williams. The drunk woman at the back, there's always one person at the party who's gone man overboard, isn't there? The Guardian called it a postmodern tribute to multiculturalism.
Me and me mum and me dad and me gran were off to Waterloo. Me and me mum and me dad and me gran and a bucket of Vindaloo.
Gradually, a new ritual was established. After 10 pints in the pub, it was down to the local Indian for more beer and the ultimate macho challenge, the Vindaloo.
You go out, you get tanked up on lassis and you go for an English. Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be a Friday night if we didn't go for an English, you know?
It was just a bunch of football chants knitted together, that idea of what British people did in the 90s, drink until they're sick, and then just go and eat massive amounts of stuff that's like so hot that it's inedible. I mean, why do we do that?
What's the blandest thing on the menu?
Scampi is particularly bland.
I'll have that. And bring a fork and knife.
You know, it just went... That record sold more than any of Blur's records.
For me, the Groucho Club idea of the 90s is kind of where the 90s went to curl up and creatively give up. And that's why I think it's so important that UK in the 90s isn't remembered as being about the Spice Girls, Blur versus Oasis, Laddism, and Damien Hirst and Vindaloo. I mean, do you remember that? It's a fucking disaster.
I think we were probably trying to be as stupid as we possibly could be. And, well, yeah, that was pretty stupid.
The end of the 90s was coming fast. On a mainstream level, the pop culture party just kept kind of continuing right through. The 90s were really this moment of kind of accelerationism, you know, when things just sped up.
This momentum continues nationwide. Art is attracting huge audiences, and in the north of England, Gateshead Council want to make their mark. Taking a gamble, they commission their own, very public, artwork.
They knew exactly what the site was, but it's right by the A1. They had rung me up before, and I said, oh, terribly sorry, I don't make motorway art in a very, sort of snotty way. But then they wrote to me, sending a picture of the site. It was the site of St Anne Colliery, where the pithead baths and the winding station had been demolished and turned into a mound. The photograph immediately convinced me. It wasn't long after that I started making the first drawings.
Well, we've seen the artist's impressions. What would it actually look like?
From the day it was announced, the project proved, well, difficult to visualise. Some thought the wind would blow it down. Others hoped it wouldn't get off the ground at all.
First of all, there was, they were going to ruin our television signal. Then it was, we're going to have hundreds of crashes on the A1 from people being distracted by this large object. There was a moment of despair when somebody found some Luftwaffe monument that was a standing figure with Messerschmitt wings, and the Gateshead Post ran this headline, "Nazi but nice." And there was a massive campaign which got thousands and thousands of signatures, stop the sculpture.
People were actually queuing up to put their names on this petition.
Antony Gormley cast his own body to create the sculpture. Even this attracts criticism.
The faith it demonstrates is a faith in the individual artist, Antony Gormley, and not in the shared affections of the people of the north of England.
This, to me, is a piece of marketing decoration.
You'd rather just not have it?
You could put a 65-foot banana on this site here.
I mean, your attitude is very symptomatic of I'd rather have nothing. These jobs down here.
It couldn't have been made without the help of all the engineers from Newcastle University and all of those shipwrights that knew how to make a compound curve out of ship plate. I can't call it my work. It was a massive collective endeavour that drew the skills and capabilities of the entire region. And it was brought on 3 massive low loaders. It couldn't go on any of the motorway bridges, so it had to come through all of the County Durham, Lower Northumberland coal mining towns. And it was incredible. People came out and cheered as it went through and raised their pints of beer. Here was a community that through the Thatcher years had been told that it had no future, that it couldn't compete. Using the skills that it had to say, well, actually, we can compete and we can make. And here is something that we've made together.
Feel a bit proud, or?
Absolutely, I'm emotional actually. I think it's wonderful.
It just puts us on the map and makes a proud Geordie feel even more proud.
Traffic was reduced to a crawl as drivers travelling to work saw the Angel for the first time.
Even though people had been told to stay away, they came, and it was really moving. There was a big man, he was crying, and I just said, what's happening, mate? He just said, look, I'm just remembering how I lost my mates. 12 died in a rockfall at that colliery. And he said, your namesake, Joe Gormley, he said we should erect an angel in memory of them. And now it's happening.
We've come a long, long way together, through the hard times and the good. I have to celebrate you, baby. I have to praise you like I should.
The ultimate praise comes from Newcastle United fans who drape a 30-foot Alan Shearer shirt on the Angel of the North.
The Shearer shirt moment was really important because this was a moment where the public psyche changed. A public that was only supposed to be interested in football could actually not only have an opinion about the art of its own time, but could actually own a piece of it themselves and feel it was theirs. That was a pretty big change of heart.
The Angel of the North achieved something very extraordinary, which is
to become a public icon. It's become part of the fabric of the country, which is an extraordinary achievement because hardly anything manages to do that. You know, it's become a kind of national symbol.
Contemporary art in Britain has never been so visible. And the young British artists have not only earned their place at the heart of the British cultural landscape, they are now a growing force on the global stage. The glamorous city of Venice hosts the biggest art party in the world. The Biennale is a Geiger counter as to who's at the cutting edge of global art.
This is the British Pavilion, and the work on show inside is by a young painter called Gary Hume, who's turned the pavilion inside out to a certain extent by putting these panel paintings, painted on aluminium with house paint, on the outside. These are of doors, which is what Hume did 6 or 7 years ago when he first came to prominence back in Britain.
It was fantastic. I loved every minute of it. It was just such a celebration.
By the time it got to the actual opening, which was fantastic, it was just all going on.
There's canopies and wine. It's just like another world. It's just incredible. And it's all for me, sort of stuff, so it's really wild.
Pulp were arriving. Jarvis was a vague friend of mine from college. We'd come to this plan, why doesn't Pulp play at Gary's party?
Just, you know, amazing. I mean, this is a huge band playing at my party.
Oh, come on now! All right! It's good!
There's a very, very large wall of Venetian blinds that are closed.
The 4 tracks Pulp play behind the blind. So you can't see them, there's just a white Venetian blind down.
Everybody's in the room screaming with excitement and sweating because it's really hot.
There was one moment where Jarvis breaks and he just has a peek through. He can't quite hold himself back because he's a performer.
And then he does it a bit more, and then he does it a bit more, and then eventually they open. And then there he is in the thickest sweater you've ever seen in your life.
The crowd are just going crazy, absolutely crazy, and the crowd are all jumping up and down like that. So they're kind of going up, and the floor's going, and there's sort of dust coming down.
All of us were like, what the hell is going on? This is like a dream. Yeah, it was brilliant.
I feel like the country had a sense that it was living through a period that was exciting. It wasn't just the artists or the art world or whatever, but there was a general sense of optimism and opportunity that had barely existed in Britain before.
Contemporary art has never been more relevant, with some artists achieving megastar status. But curiously, unlike most European cities, modern art doesn't have a dedicated national home. That is about to change. In the early 90s, a plan had been hatched to turn an old industrial space into a museum for modern art.
They came across this building, which I would call one of the invisible buildings of London. I'd lived in London all my life and I'd never noticed it.
It was outrageously ambitious because the building is so immense. It was very much Nick Serota who determined that it would be at Bankside.
Nick Serota was always an internationalist. He always believed that art should be available to everyone. I mean, that's a fantastic vision.
Still convinced.
There's no way you can do a project of this kind in England without being fairly single-minded. I mean, if I'd been doing it in Paris, it would have happened like that. And if I'd been in America, I would have seen 4 trustees and they would have paid for it all.
It takes a helping hand from the National Lottery to even get the idea off the ground. And it would take until the new millennium to complete.
felt like we got a proper international art museum. Remember, everywhere else has got one. It's like we're European, that's what it felt like.
We had a cultural flagship store.
Hey, girls. Beat boys.
This huge building of modern art is in the backdrop for a lavish party, with 4,000 guests moving around the galleries and through the Turbine Hall.
Superstar DJs. Here we go!
The opening of Tate Modern was a huge moment for Britain, I think.
I now declare the Tate Modern open.
Proper big international contemporary exhibition space for showing art. It just ramped it up a whole other level.
Once Tate Modern opened, the press thought, oh God, this is a real thing. It was probably the moment when the press really thought, well, actually, contemporary art and modern art is here to stay and it's real.
Fantastic. I mean, it's going to be one of the great places in the world to visit.
The new Tate was definitely catering for this burgeoning appetite for contemporary art. And suddenly we had this huge new cathedral at the end of the century, which took the kind of public appetite for art to another level.
I don't think it could have happened 20 years ago. I do think it's to do with the generation of artists who've shown an immense self-confidence and have helped to put the place on the map, which has launched this kind of institution.
Here we go!
In a sense, it seemed like the kind of pinnacle of the 90s. This is the acknowledgement of Britain in the modern world, vying with the other great cultural cities. So it was an immensely important cultural moment.
The opening of Tate Modern cements the power of British art in the national consciousness and in the minds of the rest of the world. But the party can't last forever. As the new millennium ushers in a more somber mood, modern artists use their strength of voice to respond.
It's the end of an era on the British High Street. Almost all the remaining C&A stores around the country have closed for the last time.
C&A on Oxford Street. The doors opened this morning for the final time. The trouble is, C&A hasn't had enough loyal customers. It's been squeezed as consumers have opted for either designer goods or discount clothes.
So much more of our lives are commodified in a way, and so I wanted to examine that power of consumerism and at the same time our own thoughts and feelings about being human beings and about possessions and ownership and self.
C&A's sales have improved recently, but as one employee leaves the store for the last time, it's clear the revival has come too late.
I sold some work and I had some money, I had a car, and then suddenly it just popped into my head, what's it all mean and what's the struggle been about? And then I just decided I'd destroy all my world of belongings in front of complete strangers on Oxford Street in the defunct C&A building. It became a kind of biography, in a sense, of my life as a consumer.
When I heard about Breakdown, I was just like, okay, so here's Michael again with another of his extremely hard-headed, exhaustive exhibitions. But the way that he goes about delivering the whole thing as an installation makes it also like extremely graphic and horrifyingly real.
He literally destroyed everything he owned. It was deeply moving, kind of exciting and shocking, and I was very glad it wasn't me.
Michael Landy has gathered every single one of his belongings. Along with a team of 12 assistants, he meticulously and very publicly strips, shreds, and crushes everything.
Obviously played on a sort of literal breakdown of stuff and then obviously a psychological breakdown. So I made an inventory of everything I owned, came to 7,227 items. And the inventory went on the wall so people could read the list, and then people could see the things being broken down into its material parts. We played my record collection whilst we did it, and then broke the vinyl up as we went along. clothes, cassette tapes, books, old love letters. Shredded my passport. My grandmother gave me some holy water, so we destroyed that as well. But I don't know how we destroyed the holy water, but we did. You know, I had a Saab 900 car, I had it valeted, I had the bump knocked out of it. But it looked its best it had ever done for years before we destroyed it.
It was a very brave piece of work to make. He pissed off a lot of his friends, you know, as he shredded their gifts and artworks and things.
Tracey Emin was traumatised to learn that a sculpture or drawing on whatever it was he owned was going to be smashed up into smithereens.
My mum came and I kicked her out of the exhibition because she was crying.
What was the hardest thing to destroy?
I suppose my dad's sheepskin coat was probably the only thing, because I thought I was jinxing him, because he was still alive at that juncture. Big sheepskin coat that my mum bought for him just before he had his industrial accident, so he never actually ever wore it. My dad was a tunnel miner. Dad had a tunnel accident when he was 37, and he was never able to work again. I guess that was the most profound thing that happened to me during my childhood was my dad's accident. The only thing he ever wanted to do was build tunnels, which is a godforsaken thing. I mean, who would want to do something mucky and disgusting like that? That's what immigrants do, isn't it? They do the jobs that other people in the whole don't want to do. My mum and dad come over this country to make better lives for themselves. People work hard, don't they, to own and possess things, so that was probably the hardest thing as far as, because it became him, because it spent 2 weeks on the conveyor belt, going up and down.
50,000 people come in off the streets to see Breakdown. It takes Michael 3 years to create the piece and only 2 weeks to destroy it.
Like all artists, they're responding to themselves, their experience of the world, and consciously or not consciously, to a greater history of culture. The new generation reflects the current world.
My honor, welcome the Prime Minister back to Camp David.
War, not yet inevitable, but if these two men have their way, it seems more and more likely. Saddam Hussein is a menace and has to be dealt with, and they don't believe they're alone.
A lot of people understand he holds weapons of mass destruction.
It is the case that if the only means of achieving the disarmament of Iraq of weapons of mass destruction is the removal of the regime, then the removal of the regime, of course, has to be our objective.
I remember going on the march against the Iraq War, and we were all walking and we were thinking, oh my God, how stupid were we to believe in Blair and all that sort of nonsense.
The BBC has learned that a senior official involved in preparing the government's dossier on Iraqi weapons of mass destruction has said the document was rewritten just before it was published. The official said it was to make it more exciting.
You could see the build-up and the determination on the part of Blair and Bush to prosecute this war, whatever. So it was all just deeply, deeply depressing.
When I pass protesters every day at Downing Street, I may not like what they call me, but I thank God that they can call me what they want to call me. That's freedom.
One man exercising that freedom is Brian Hoare. He's been protesting in Parliament Square since 2001. It catches the eye of one of a new generation of artists tapping into the potential of art to make a political statement.
I'd been taking photographs of Brian Hoare's protest in Parliament Square, and I got a call from the Tate. They had this big gap in their programme, and they said they were asking me and a couple of other artists if we had any ideas of what we might be able to show there. And I said I want to reproduce that.
Defend the right to protest!
The government have tried several times to evict Brian Hoare. Now a new act makes it illegal to demonstrate within a kilometre radius of Parliament without police permission.
And then I got a phone call to tell me that 72 policemen had arrived and taken all of Brian's protests away, save for one board. By that point, I had 800 odd photographs, and we set about reproducing the protest.
His installation was called State Britain and was praised by critics as a bold political statement with art's ability to articulate fundamental human truths.
Art is a way of investigating and confronting the world with itself on the world's terms. Artists say, I'm not going to serve power anymore, I'm not going to serve anybody. I am going to show what an individual can do on their own.
10 years, 1 month, 3 weeks, 4 days. That's how long Tony Blair has been Prime Minister. His time is now up. Just outside the gates, protesters reminded him that some are glad to see him go.
I wish everyone, friend or foe, well, and that is the end.
I mean, it was great when Blair got in. Wasn't that long-lived, though, I must say, and he became a great disappointment, I think, to us all.
Let down by Blair, the success of young artists continues to rise. When a new Prime Minister takes over, they face an impending global crisis.
Tokyo, Frankfurt, London and New York, stock market falls have been felt around the world. The root cause of all of this is America. Some borrowers with poor credit histories can't afford to pay back their mortgages.
While the financial markets slide, the art market remains bullish.
190.
In Britain, confidence in young artists and the art world has never been higher. By 2007, Damien Hirst is invincible and selling his artworks for millions of pounds.
It must be quite an odd feeling to be the most expensive living artist.
You know, I mean, I end up in a position where I've got to be very careful about who I give things to. And I'm also interested in making people look at a picture. I want them to look at the picture and enjoy the picture. But if I give somebody something and they put it on, they're not going to put it on, they're not going to see the picture, they're going to see the dollar signs. Yeah. And so that's something I'm thinking about at the moment and don't quite know how to deal with.
Damien Hirst's artistic response to wealth and status is to make a work that pushes the boundaries of art to its limit. Costing him over £12 million to create, it's the most expensive artwork ever made.
I was worried when I was making it, it was going to look like, you know, some kind of tacky bling or something like that. But, you know, in the end, I think it looks, you know, it raises above that.
It was bling, you know. I know it sounds simplistic. It was, you know, I'm partly from Essex, so I understand the blingness, and it was just a wonderful object. It's also wasteful and foreboding and also terrifying as well. Yeah, but I can only dream.
Damien's always interested in pushing the boundaries and changing the rules. And I think it's become very apparent to him that his artworks have a certain price on the market. So I think this was like an exercise in trying to determine the value of art, the value of money, the value of things that we put value on.
What's the retail value of this one?
I think the gallery, we're talking $100 million or something like that. Go.
For the Love of God is declared sold, bought for the asking price by an anonymous consortium. The art market is in overdrive, meaning earlier works by esteemed older British artists are also reaching new heights.
Yeah, a painting of Sue Tilley is expected to fetch several £1 million in New York tomorrow.
I was at work in the job centre. Someone downstairs rang, there's Evening Standard here to see you. And they went, oh, we're just going to let you know that your painting is going to be the most expensive painting in the world. I went, well, how do you know? Well, Christie's always let us know first.
You may think America's going through an economic downturn, but the people who can afford to spend here can afford to spend here.
We have with us here in the studio the artist model whose image is going to break all records tomorrow, probably when it goes for sale in New York.
And selling, fair warning, at $30 million.
And then at 1 o'clock in the morning, the woman from Christie's rang and said, yeah, it's a world record. And I went, oh.
The painting by artist Lucian Freud sold for almost £17 million. It's now the most expensive work by a living artist sold at auction.
So tell me who bought it. Well, this is a funny thing. It was bought by Roman Abramovich. He was a Russian oligarch. Obviously, it was just small change to him, you know, when he's a multi-billionaire.
Billionaire Roman Abramovich has already bought Chelsea Football Club. And now he's buying art.
At £2,200,000.
He is part of a rise in super-rich international art collectors with money to spend.
For £4,200,000.
Prices are rocketing.
So, thank you.
And it's changing the art world forever.
People really did start to use it as stocks and shares. I mean, now people have got huge art collections they never look at. They're kept in warehouses, and they've got no intention of ever looking at the art. They're just buying it as an investment. That's what's made the prices go through the roof.
7 million, 7 million 5, 8 million.
People saw it as an opportunity to enrich themselves. I wouldn't say suddenly overnight in Britain there was some like aesthetic kind of revolution. They all appreciated art and they had to have it in their lives.
You've basically got people who amass large art collections they have no interest in. They can only tell you how much they paid for it, what its estimated value is now, how much it would cost to ship, last time it was going for Sotheby's, what it was worth. They could tell you that. They couldn't tell you fuck all else about it. The interesting thing that happened when the oligarchs got involved was Damien Hirst's first retrospective wasn't in the UK, it wasn't in America, it was in Ukraine.
This exhibition is so special because I've got works from 1990 and before, you know, like over nearly 20 years of work. So it's a big amount of work.
From DIY shows to the largest centre for contemporary art in Eastern Europe, British culture's truly global. The art party's in full swing. Art fairs are popping up around the world, bringing a new breed of dealer eager to sell to buyers with money to spend.
It completely changed the art world because lots of art dealers were basically the kind of people who would have been estate agents. They had no idea about running a gallery and didn't care about art, suddenly started opening up galleries and flogging stuff.
The fact that there is an enormous amount of wealth that doesn't quite know what to do with itself in the hands of very few people means that they've used the art world and its products as trophies.
At the centre of this whirlwind, one artist knows the value of his own work and takes back control.
This is certainly the, superstar end of the art market, and he's doing it in a completely different way.
Damien Hirst sells his work directly to the public via auction, cutting out the dealers.
I was a bit young to be a punk. I was 12 in '77, so I quite like it when you do things like this. But I think, at the end of the day, I knew it'd upset a lot of people, and I quite like that.
Art has no real value. It only has value at the moment of exchange, and, Damien understands that.
In a sale room, all that matters is if you've got the cash. Of course, there is a risk. What if no one bids?
Made a huge number of works to be sold over 3 days. It was a great risk. Damien likes risk, you know what I mean? He thrives on risk.
Damien's confidence flies in the face of the global crisis as financial markets plummet.
Lot number 1, Heaven Can Wait.
There's been meltdown on the world's financial markets following the collapse of one of the giants of American banking, Lehman Brothers. Shares have plummeted around the world, billions wiped off their value.
Are you checking me? Are you asking me for trading? Fair warning, Alex. Last chance.
I was in the West End. I was on my scooter and I passed Sotheby's and there were some people on the street. And I said, how did the sale go? And they were like saying, oh, it's amazing, amazing. Damien's done it again.
Selling to you, Shane. Fair warning, Alex. Last chance at 9 million too. Sold. Congratulations.
The story is Damien was playing snooker at the Groucho Club and people were telling him prices as he was potting the next black.
Sold to you, Bruno. Thank you very much indeed. 8 million 5. L0,900,000. 9 million pounds at 9 million pounds. Sold. Congratulations.
He'd just been hugely successful. He turned art into money. Again, it's like he had the Midas touch. I mean, that's what the people on the Bond Street were very excited about. I think they were into, all they could see was the money.
Lehman Brothers goes bust on the same day that Hirst makes a cool £111 million. Art not only has the power to attract money, it also has the power to transform a place. Art-drenched East End cool speaks to young, ambitious creatives.
Yeah. This is the Bond Street of Shoreditch.
It's really lovely. It's got a lot of character,
Yeah, it is.
Isn't it?
I mean, you've got the various bars. The biggest sign of gentrification of all is the Prince of Wales, as Architectural Trust is now located there on the left.
I remember we were in Rivington Street and one day a Porsche appeared. And I opened the doors. Bloody Porsche outside. It's like, what the fuck's a Porsche doing out there? And Tim and I, we graffitied his wing mirrors. And one day, this man appeared, saw him getting in his car, and he was carrying a stack of plates, put them in there with knives and forks. And it was a chef. We just got chatting to him, and he was off to do a private dinner for Mark Knopfler. It turns out it's Mark Hicks. And that's his Porsche. And we'd wrote I Love Sex in his wing mirrors.
Mark Hicks is chef-director of favourite celebrity haunt, The Ivy. He's one of a new wave of chefs buying into a piece of East End cool.
He ended up opening the first restaurant in that area, which was on Rivington Street, and it was called Rivington. He wasn't stupid, and he knew that follow the artists, basically.
First restaurateurs, now property developers and estate agents. This once edgy part of London is fast becoming hipster heaven.
At the time, you feel a bit cross. You think, why are the estate agents using the publicity
for my lifestyle that I've done for different reasons in order to sell their property. But in retrospect, the art world and art people, they do instigate change for other people too. It was a sort of brand almost, that you could live in a loft situation, and the developers who were moving into the area by then were selling that brand.
There's a very intimate relationship between the idea that a dilapidated area being taken up by artists who will then manufacture a new aesthetic that then is attractive for those people who are kind of bewildered and infatuated and mesmerised by artistic activity. You know, so I think the artists are fully implicated in gentrification.
But the story of contemporary British art doesn't end here. It's conquered hearts, minds, and pockets, and now it's time to conquer the world.
My friend came round and we were running between the balcony to see the fireworks in real life and the telly. And the opening ceremony, you know, people go, oh, it's British, it'll be shit, it'll be rubbish. It's one of the best things I've ever seen in my whole life.
About 5 minutes in, I was thinking, am I comfortable with this or not? And then, you know, and then it was like, whoa, hang on, this is amazing, you know.
Nearly 1 billion people worldwide are treated to a celebration of British history and culture.
It felt so right. It was, you're going to tell the story. It's about you. It seemed like we had something to celebrate, not just take the piss out of.
Nationally, there was a shift for a moment.
People refer to it all the time, don't they now? It's interesting how it's become this touchstone for a different kind of Britain.
And British contemporary art has cemented itself at the heart of this great story. It's front and centre as the Olympics close, featuring an enormous spin painting by Damien Hirst.
Britain is an amazingly fertile place for culture and for visual culture, as it has been for music as well. The YBAs were part of this kind of symbiosis, you know. Things have to come together in order for them to happen, you know. And so everything was right. You know, YBAdom doesn't really exist now. I like to say MABAs, middle-aged British artists, which they are. And they're always there. They make souvenirs of their age in the best sense of the word. They can never be written out of the history of British culture.